So welcome everyone. I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the lands of which we're meeting across tonight. I'm on Ngunnawal country and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. If you want to pop in the chat the country that you're on tonight, feel free to do so. It's just one small way that we can acknowledge the care and dedication that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people made to this country long before colonisation ever happened. I also want to acknowledge the immense value that people with lived experience bring to suicide prevention work. There wouldn't be suicide prevention without lived experience, and so we acknowledge the value there is in including these voices in suicide prevention. We're going to be recording the session tonight, so if you don't want to be in the video or on audio in the recording, just stay on mute and off camera, and you'll be out of the recording. We're not going to be talking too deeply about stories tonight, but if something comes up, I encourage you to prioritize your self-care and talk to a trusted friend or put into motion all of the things that you do to keep yourself well when you're doing suicide prevention work. If something comes up for you following the session, feel free to get in contact with me. At the end of the session, I'll put my email address in the chat and you can just reach out and we can start to have a conversation offline. So tonight we're talking about community events, and a lot of people with lived experience turn to community events to get their message out to a wide range of people, and often they reach people who aren't engaged in health services or other community service environments, and so they're a great way to kind of get your message out and reach a lot of people. And I'm really fortunate to be joined here tonight with Jon Eddy, who has done some fantastic work in this space and has a lot of expertise that we can learn from in learning how to put on community events related to suicide prevention and mental health. Before we get started, I'll just run through some introductions. If you've got questions during the session, please feel free to jump in. We're a small group tonight, so interrupt, pop stuff in the chat, and we'll have a bit more of a conversation. That's really the value of these things. We all have lived experience to add to the conversations, and so yeah, I welcome you to jump in and contribute as we go through the session. So my name's Hayley. I've had a number of different lived experience roles in the suicide prevention space. And when it comes to community events, my experience is really limited. So it's really great to have Jon here to jump in and share his expertise. I've mostly been a connector and facilitator when it comes to community events between people who organise the events and the organisations that they organise them on behalf. So I'm bringing that perspective to the conversation tonight. And I'm really passionate about lived experience engagement in suicide prevention, and that's why I started CriticLE, to start having these deeper conversations about how we can better engagement of people with lived experience in our work in suicide prevention. And it's through CriticLE that the discussion is brought to you tonight. So I'll hand over now to Jon if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you've got here tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Hayley. How you going, everyone? My name's Jon Eddy, and I would dispute that I'm an expert in anything, but I was thinking about what I've actually done in the past 3 years, just before I came into this meeting, and I've actually been a part of quite a few community events. What sort of led me to that is my lived experience, obviously. I lost my son in 2019 to suicide, and it's the third close family member I've lost to suicide, and I've actually survived my own attempt. So I sort of know a bit about that side of the story, I guess. And what initially really prompted me to do something in the community around that was, after I lost my son, I really wanted to get into schools and talk to students about suicide, really, and what the result is, and what it does to people left behind, and just to have an open and frank discussion about it. I was pretty promptly told there's no way they'd let a 50-year-old grieving plumber talk to kids about suicide. So probably a good thing to say, no doubt. I didn't have a lot of training at that point about safety and whatnot, but I thought rather than take no for an answer, I'd move down towards putting on a music festival. And my way of thinking was, if I have music for free, we can use that as bait to get the kids in and have information available at the site to hand out to the kids. And it really evolved from there. The lead up to that, I became involved with a fantastic organisation over here called the Blue Tree Project. They've done a lot of trees, paint them blue and get the conversation going about mental health and suicide prevention is the idea. When you drive down the road and you see a blue tree, you're like, what's that about? And I think, you beauty, a customer, I can tell you exactly what that's about. So I painted a few of those, and they sort of got a bit of a life of their own. A really good friend of mine in Western Australia here in Busselton called David Barton. He's a physiotherapist and heavily involved in the community and all sorts of events, offered up the front yard of his premises on the highway to put a blue tree in. Where a lot of people just find one existing, we decided to relocate one. He set up the Busselton Man Walk, which is a national entity as well, the Man Walk around Australia, which is a great organisation getting us guys together. And the whole project got quite big, quite fast, actually. One of the guys on the Man Walk is the mayor of Busselton, and he said, look, if you keep the tree under a certain height, we won't have to put any building permits in or whatnot. So we kept it under the height, but we sort of relocated the 3.5 ton stump, which is pretty. He was shaking his head a bit. There was a fair bit of engineering that went into that, and basically I went out and canvassed the community. David, my friend, and another guy called Mark Lane helped with the project, and we got builders involved, and we organised a raffle to go with that event, and we raised $11,000, which is a pretty good effort on our first crack. And the tree's still very much there. It's going to be there for a long time, but at no point could we really pay for anything. It was offered we had to actually knock back people offering us food for the barbecue and things like that. And we had Channel 7 and whatnot. The wonderful Kendall White, who is the founder and CEO of the Blue Tree Project, came down because we made Blue Tree one of the benefactors of that money raised. And in that process, I met a guy called David, who is our bank manager and happens to be the bank manager of my business. And I floated the idea of this concert, and he came back the next day and said, yep, we're in, we'll give you 10 grand, let's do it. And away we went. So we went from there to a meeting with the city of Busselton. I remember I was asked, what experience have you got putting on music events? And I looked at my watch and said, about 2.5 minutes. So, we walked out of there with ongoing funding. So we just recently had the second year of raising the Vibe Music Festival. So it's evolved, and it is evolving. We've got ongoing funding for that. My idea was to get not only young people in to get them the information, but also it was at the peak of COVID. We actually had to postpone the event initially. And I wanted the music industry to be offered money, if they needed it. If they wanted to donate the acts or whatever, we would take it, but we wouldn't ask it. We'd offer them full fare. So we went out and fundraised to do that. And we pulled it off. First event was 9 hours long, so it was a 22-hour day, and I swore I'd never ever do one again. So we went to about 4.5 hours this year, which is a much nicer time frame. Look, it's really, really hard work, but it's incredibly rewarding. So like I said, we've just done the second one, and I'm still at the point where I don't think I ever want to do another one again, but about another month I'll sort of launch into it and get the mojo back on for it, I guess. So
Yeah, I can imagine there'd be a lot of work, and you touched on a few things there that I want to ask about as we chat tonight around permits and the rules you have to kind of negotiate, how you get money, that sort of thing. But they'll come up in the questions as I go through them. I've prepared a few questions, but for for those of you here tonight, if you want to jump in with questions of your own or comments in relation to any of the questions, feel free to do so. As I said earlier, we've all got experience that we can add to the conversation. So, Jon, I want to first start by asking you, when people find themselves in a situation where they want to do something in the community, how do you kind of figure out where to start? Like, what's the process that you've gone through?
I think probably one big point is actually really clearly identifying what you want to do and start moving down that road. So for example, with a concert, so you know, we had to make sure we had a venue and all these processes in place to move towards that. And setting up a really good committee is huge. Finding people who have different skills. You know, I'm hopeless on a computer, so someone else can do that for me. I'm quite good at going out and canvassing community and raising funds, I guess, and sharing my lived experience story in such a way that it sort of tended to galvanise people and draw them in and get them to jump on board. So it's just making sure, I guess, identify what you want to do and then put the team together, which sounds, it was never easy. You know, people come and go from committees. We're talking about a volunteer group. People have lives that continue on, and you know, it was up and down, but then, you know, you see the end event, and it was fantastic. It's got great response. I'm never happy with the numbers. I reckon I could do double with the numbers that we, but I'm told everyone really enjoys it. And yeah, it's identify where to start and start moving down that process.
So that's an interesting point about bringing people together and doing it as a team. You know, me being an introvert, I think, oh, I'll just go and do this by myself. But I suppose having a team around you, you can leverage those different skills and abilities that people have and kind of divvy up the work to make it a bigger and better event. Is there like a magical recipe for who should be on your committee?
Now I probably think yes. When I started, no, I wouldn't have had a clue, to be honest. It was I think because I'm just so very passionate about suicide prevention, and that shined through, and it brought a couple of real key people to me to help me in that process. And the couple of the key people involved had really good community connections already. Prior to losing my son, I wouldn't have gone out and done anything like this. And, you know, there's no way I would stand up and talk in front of people or even perhaps do what we're doing now. But because of this topic and that I'm passionate about it, I said to someone the other day, I'm just fearless about it. I'll just get up in front of whoever and do whatever it takes to get what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's talking to a politician or talking to the media, whatever, you know, I'll just go out there in front of it and do it. You're not always successful, obviously. Not every connection is made, and you know, you don't kick a goal at every point. So you've got to be prepared for rejections and failures. And you know, I estimate out of 100 emails, you get 80 of them no replies, and then 19 will be no's, but you get a yes, and maybe that yes is a 10 grand.
Yeah,
so, you know, you
that
just
must be really hard, all of that rejection.
Yes, it is at first, but then I sort of quickly realised it's just a part of it. And I've sort of said to people before, you know, like there's no doors, no closed doors here. There's just doors that have got to be kicked down, essentially, because it's too important.
Yeah. Yeah. So you spoke about how you went from wanting to go into schools to then, you know, creating a music event to bring the kids to you. What was the process in deciding that? And around the blue trees, what was the process in deciding exactly what activity you were going to do? Because like there's lots of different things. The stereotypical things, the sausage sizzle, fundraiser, those sorts of things. But what you've chosen is very different to those sort of traditional community activities.
I started Blue tree is just a really good way of, you can either just go and paint a blue tree on your own, or you can do it with your friends, or you can organise a community event. So it's open for all, essentially, and if you're not up to organising permits and whatnot, you can do one on private property, do whatever you like. So there's lots of ways of doing it, and to get the story out there, and it's shared on Facebook, and then if you want to take it to the next level, I did one in a Indigenous playground in a town near us, and they had all these bush poles, and I was like, oh, no one's ever going to let you paint one there. So after we had a community painting day with a heap of kids covered in blue paint, it's still blue, very much blue. It's there, and again tied it in with a sausage sizzle, and it just seemed that the momentum sort of grew a little bit. And Kendall, the founder of Blue Tree's got a bit of a background in events too. So when, with the combination of the Bendigo Bank initial funds and her experience, and she chipped in a fair bit of money as well, and time, and it was essentially born from that. So, I floated the idea, and people really liked it. A big part of what I wanted to do too was bring what services are available in my community together at that time and at that point as well. So, we quickly worked out that, number one, it's going to be a totally free event. So it's open to all. So we're not going to exclude anyone, especially if someone's underprivileged or something like that. We're not going to raise money for a ticket. And number two, we just wanted to have something that was a bit interactive. So you go to these events and everyone's handing out cards and flyers at a plastic table under a marquee, and people get them and just walk past the next bin and chuck them in the bin. So, we wanted something that was a little bit more interactive. So we organised as many of the local not-for-profits that are sort of aligned with what we wanted to do, had them together in one place, and, Kendall organised like a big painting that kids could come and paint. And this year we had a popcorn machine, which is something very simple, but it was free. We gave out free popcorn. Oh, God, the kids couldn't believe it. So,
Who doesn't love free popcorn?
Yeah, it's, it cost us, I think it was a couple of $100 for like all these served for free popcorn, and people couldn't believe that we're giving it away. But they were in the tent. So, and at the same time, we used that opportunity. We had like little gift bags to hand out with all the information and the flyers in the gift bag. So it's a little bit something to carry away with them and take it home. Things like fridge magnets, obviously, and whatever it takes just to get some word out there. So it really did grow. I remember my friend David Barton, when I proposed the idea to him, said, "Oh, gee whiz, John, that's a pretty big idea, And I said, "Yeah, well, it's a pretty big problem, David." So when he's been one of the biggest backers we've had too. So a good friend of mine and a good support.
I really like that. It's a big problem. And the shift around, instead of just handing out a single flyer, putting it in a bag so that people do carry it home. That's such a clever little change that might get the information out to the people that need it. You spoke about making it free and having free popcorn. Do you need a lot of money to do this sort of thing?
Depends. I guess it would depend on how big do you want to go. I would suggest to anyone listening to this who wants to start small. Build up. I sort of was very fortunate to meet some very clever people, and by no means could I take any or all of the credit for anything that I've done. It's always been a team event and a community event. There's so many people that go into putting any of these bigger things together, and a lot of in-kind donation. Like we actually, the first Raising the Live festival was in the peak of COVID, so we had to have fences put up around the venue because of just to keep track of people going in and out and registrations and stuff. And what a way to tackle your first major event in the middle of COVID. So it was a bit of an achievement. So a local trade hire company is just fantastic. I approached them, and yes, they said, anything you want, you've got. It doesn't matter. They were there at 11 o'clock at night pulling down fences with us to take it all back at night. The cable trays and hand sanitizing stations, all the little tiny bits and pieces that you walk past at all these events and don't think anything about, but it's all going to be brought there and all taken home. Volunteers, money is huge. You go out there and I went out there and shared my story very honestly, and I'm told the way I do it is very relatable to people. It's not coming from any sort of clinical background, or I'm just, I'm John the plumber, or ex-plumber now. So I work full time for Roses in the Ocean. I'm really proud to say, and and that's what I am. I don't want to be anything other than what I am. So and just put it out there. People related to it. People sort of gravitated towards it and wanted to help. And I think it's hard as finding someone who's been affected by suicide. And how hard is it really? Whether they want to put their hand up and be public about it, that's another thing. And don't do it. I would recommend. It's not an easy path. So, but there's other ways of helping. It could be just $1,000 donation, or someone gave us $10,000 and we don't even know who it was. So,
wow.
It's the community at the end here has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And really supportive of it. And I can't wait to see what next year brings. I really want to change it up again. We've had 2 years and they've both been very different runs. Layouts of it have been very different. I'd really like to see what we come up with this year and try and change it up every year. I think it's a good formula. Keep it interesting for people.
Yeah.
Another side of the things we did is there's quite a famous surf brand down here. And again, me being me, I just approached the CEO and the owner of it and told them what I wanted to do, and they said, "Yep, we're in." So they ran quite a major skate competition in conjunction with us. So we sort of teamed up with them. That helped with advertising as well. Hit the media up, all the stuff you can think of. But it is not easy. So marketing is probably one of our biggest weaknesses, which we're still sort of really got to work on.
Yeah. Yeah, and you touched on a really valuable point, that in the power of storytelling to get people to join your cause. I took away from that you simply just told your lived experience story in an open way, and that brought people over and made them want to get involved with you. And that in-kind support is so important for these sorts of things, because it's something you don't have to spend money on. So you can get that support and spend the little bit of money that you have on something else.
Yeah, in-kind support's huge. I mean, yeah, it's like I said earlier, if the acts didn't want to get paid, we'd take that. That's beautiful. It's this year we had a $20,000 act as a headline, and they did it. They'd lost a band member, I think, so they did it for less than half price. I realised very early on when I decided to go as public and as loud as I could with my story. People straight away contacted me, and some of them were in crisis. So I was like, oh, wow, I didn't expect this, and didn't expect it so very fast to happen like that. So I sort of started training myself, I guess. I did assist and safe talk very early on. And again, organisations such as Roses in the Ocean, training, which is often out there for free if people want it. I realised just to go and educate myself as fast as I could around how to talk about the topic safely and effectively. And one thing I've really learned is to be positive. And I've said, how can talking, or how can my story possibly be positive? But you get so much further, and you may not necessarily feel positive, and that's okay. But I still really try and portray that positive energy. There's a story of hope here. I hope we can change things, and I hope no one ever has to go through what I'm going to have to go through. And it's you get so much further by being positive about the story. As hard as and strange as that probably sounds to some people, it's how it must be. People respond to a positive story. Having a great free music festival at Bustleton, which is on the foreshore and in a beautiful location, and so the topic is suicide prevention and good mental health, but it was a positive day. People were there, kids were there, families were sitting on rugs and having picnics, and it's just, I guess, as good as an outcome as you could hope for.
Yeah. Yeah, and you touched earlier about the insurances and permits and stuff. Well, not insurances, but permits and stuff. I wanted to ask you about how you kind of navigate that insurances and council permits and that sort of stuff that you need when you hold events in public places.
Oh, look, just don't worry about it. Just go for it. Nah. Um, um, how we got around it was, or not around it, how we worked with it was Blue Tree Project again, are set up BGR charity, the deductible gift recipient charity. So they had all the insurances in place and public liability, and everything was in place. So it was quite an easy process from that side of things. It can seem incredibly daunting, any of that sort of stuff. But I come from a small business background, so I'm quite used to dealing with all that sort of problems anyway. It's not, it's not a huge hurdle. It's just boxes that need to be ticked and forms that need to be filled out. Permit applications for the city of Busselton were difficult. But again, I'll go back that we did have a committee to deal with that, so that it's not something that I would have been able to tackle on my own by any stretch of the means. And again, some people on that committee had prior experience with doing those things. So that makes it incredibly easy. And, the insurance is in place. There's a certain few things you've got to do. You'll be amazed at what goes into it. My goodness, like you've got to notify the residents of sound and notify the police and notify St John's ambulance and all these other little things that you just don't actually think about having to be a part of it. But yeah, it's I guess put the team together and when they've got prior experience, it's almost, now that you're asking this question, feels a bit like you're cheating a little bit. But the process was made quite easy. I thought it wasn't anywhere near as hard as I thought it would be.
So what you're saying is if someone wants to start a community event, come to you and you'll give them a cheat sheet on how to do all of this.
Yeah, well, I'll do anything I can to help. Absolutely. Yeah. Any advice? I guess, the local council and the cities will have advice for you on how to do that. The
Do they have
Busselton,
resources where it's like
yeah.
a list of people you need to contact? Because I had no idea you needed to contact the ambulance, the police, all of those people that you just mentioned. I had no idea.
Yeah, there's like a checklist that they have. They're incredibly supportive. And again, it's, who's going to really bucket a concert for suicide prevention? It's and it's free. We're not charging. It's not like we're going out there to make $100,000 out of this thing. We just want to get the word out there and make it accessible for everyone. So people just jumped on board left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
There's work that you don't see. We're going out there putting out call flute signs and then moving them because they can only be for 2 weeks. And then, the day after you got to go out there and pull them all down. And it's like, this doesn't ever seem to end. But when you see a bunch of happy kids there, it's pretty awesome. It's well worth it.
Yeah, and I guess having a large group of volunteers and a committee makes that job easier because you don't have to do it all on your own.
Yeah. Look, and we didn't have a big heap of volunteers this year. The main thing we were after was getting the not-for-profits and the other organisations in together. And so, they obviously had their volunteers there. And the committee, we're obviously volunteering, so there's a lot of hard work from us, especially on the day. But people seem to find their role. Like we had someone on the committee this year, other than Kendall, Angela, who has really done a heap of events in the city of Busselton as well. So, she was right over it. And a young girl called Nave who's full of energy, who, just the team just really seemed to find our spots that we're good at and stick to that. And it just happens really quite easily, I thought.
Yeah.
Easy to say that now because it's been done and dusted and you forget that pain on the night, I think. But,
yeah.
I would suggest to people if they really like music, don't put on a music event because you probably won't enjoy too much of it on the day.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask, when you've done all of this planning and you're all ready to go, how do you get the word out into the community about your events so that people actually do attend?
That's a really good question, and it's one of the, like I said earlier, the marketing side of things is really challenging. It's not something I'm especially good at. We would probably, I'm sort of tinkering around with the idea of perhaps getting someone professional to help us next year and try and raise the funds to do that. To really, like I said, I want to triple the numbers. I want to see 3,000 to 5,000 people. You know, obviously all the usual chestnuts are there, like Facebook and Instagram, and boosting your Instagram and Facebook accounts for paying for that. So you get the extra marketing through that.
Is that worth
Legwork.
it?
I don't know. I would like to see some way of gathering that data and finding out if it is. I don't know the total number of shares we ended up with. But yeah, I guess it's, you know, if you get 20 people out of it, it's worth it. That 20 people will tell 20 people. We probably need to change the time of the year a little bit to go a bit warmer weather. But so you got your Facebook. We got radio sponsorship. We got a really good package from the local radio station, which was really good. So they made up ads for us, and that was aired. I want to try and approach the local TV station this year and try and get them on board. Legwork, you know, printing a heap of flyers and posters and walking the streets and putting them out there. We visited a lot of schools, try and get the school student boards onto it as well, and try and get the kids to share it amongst themselves, which is sort of key. I don't know how successful any of it was. Look, it was a fantastic day. I'm pretty hard on myself with numbers. Like if I was aiming for 2,000, I'd be secretly aiming for 4, and if I didn't get to 5, I'd be disappointed. So you know, I think it was, someone said we probably realistically had about 1,500 people, maybe more, this year. So
Yeah, but John, you also have said to me previously, if you reach one person, then that's enough.
Yep.
So 1,500 or 1.
Yeah, no, exactly. And look, it was successful. You know, it's the second year we've done it. None of us have a professional background as such in putting on major events like this, and we've done it 2 years in a row. So we've got a proven track record now, and it gets easier. The first year was incredibly hard raising money. So much work went into raising money, and in the early days, and I hate saying the phrase, to be honest, I can't think of any other way to say it, but the early part of my journey, I suppose, it takes such a toll on you to get up and share your story publicly. It would take me sometimes a week to recover. You know, we had quite a major fundraising event leading into our fundraising event. It wasn't a fundraising event, sorry, leading into the concert, but we had a hypnotist come in at a local venue when we put on a big event, an auction night at that. So you know, it just takes such a toll on you. I'm much better at it now. I don't know if I'm just getting used to it or working out strategies how to look after yourself after such things. But I'd be just ask people to be very cautious of it in a way. You know, as you know yourself, I'm sure, Hayley, with sharing your lived experience story, it does take a toll. And when you're out there publicly, it sort of can leave you open for criticism, I guess, and people misinterpreting what you're trying to do, and especially when there's money involved. Money's my least motivating factor. I can care less about it. I just see it as a little bit of a tool that I need to put on this event to try and help save lives. So that's as complicated as it is for me.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I found that in my early days, I too would get quite exhausted from laying it all bare when the emotions are so raw and you're so close to the suicide event and unpracticed in telling your story and protecting yourself from comments and everything. Like even people giving support afterwards and coming up and saying, wow, well done, you've really helped me see somebody else's troubles in a new light, and like that's encouraging, but it is also really exhausting. So I definitely get that, and it has changed over time as I've gotten more practiced in telling my story and using my lived experience in this space. So that is really good advice, to take it slow and be careful in those early days of when you first start doing this sort of stuff.
Mm.
I wanted to move the conversation now to what happens on the day. It is a suicide prevention or mental health event. where difficult emotions might come up for people who attend, or other considerations that people sort of need to think of? What sort of happens on the day, and what should people expect when they've put on an event?
I forgot to mention another event I do, and that's called the Cape Walk for Life, which is a community walk I organised in conjunction with the Man Walk. And the reason why I mention this is it's a good example of what we do in that situation. And the Cape Walk for Life came about after we lost a young girl here to suicide prior to the first concert. And I had an extreme sense of urgency. I couldn't wait for the concert date. I wanted to do something sooner and try and bring the community together, because we're really hurting at that point. So it's a beautiful spot on the ocean and an amazing walk. And you know, we did it in conjunction with Lifeline and the Blue Tree Project and the Man Walk again. So 3 entities, and again, I'm not driven by raising money, so I can care less about raising money. But we just had a sausage sizzle there, so people had something to eat, and if they wanted to donate, they could. But we just made sure, like, you know, as people wanted to hear me say something for some reason, so I got up and said something about why we were there and bringing the community together. And then we pointed out people in the audience who had some training around assist or something like that. So people went in to sort of felt like they needed to talk to someone, or you know, felt upset, or I'm going to say triggered, but I don't like saying that anymore. Apparently. You know, and set them off in some way. There was the option of people there. We didn't want them sort of to stand out, you know, that they could just, you know, recognise these people around them. And, you know, and if someone looked physically upset, these people could go up and just say, you know, you're going okay. Likewise with the concert, you know, we had people around that had this sort of training. It was very clearly in the tent, we called it the wellness tent. So that's where the free popcorn was. And, you know, if people were upset, there's people well trained in there to be able to help them. All the information we handed out had, you know, like the Roses in the Oceans, Peer Warm Line, Lifeline numbers and Headspace and all these other entities, so that the helplines are freely available to everyone at that concert on the day. Yeah, and any media, you know, like you stick to the mind frame guidelines, and always say that the Lifeline number after any media we do, then the events and stuff like that. So there's lots of people in the community who are trained. So it's just a matter of identifying and are you okay on the day to help out and do this service if we need it, you know.
Yeah, and I guess for the music festival in particular, you were asking services to participate in the day and be there. So they're the perfect place where people can get support when they're in that participating in the event.
Yeah, yep, and again, likewise with asking for help and then kind support and whatnot. It's not often you get too many no's for that. You know, people are at the concert, they're you know, we had people sort of really banging on our door to offer to volunteer. And I guess, you know, once you start traveling in these circles too, with what I was doing with suicide prevention and awareness and whatnot, that's you get to know who's who very quickly. And yeah, the people were incredible about their support. So it came forth very easily, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just have one final question for you, Jon, before we have a bit more of a relaxed, open conversation with everyone who's here tonight. You spoke a little bit about this already, about feeling exhausted and never wanting to put on an event again when it's over. But what can people expect when the event is over, whether it's a success in your eyes or their eyes or not a success? Like, what happens after the event's finished?
I'd start before it. So how it goes for me, obviously everyone's very different. So how it goes for me, you sort of come up this slope, you ramp up to this absolute pinnacle height of, I guess, almost full on adrenaline rush, you know, as you're rushing around and so much to organise and sheer panic that no one's going to show up, and I guess, and all the other emotions that go with it. And, you know, it's an emotionally charged event anyway, because it's my lived experience that's driven it largely. And the reason I'm there is because of my losses, really. So it's incredibly emotional, and I sometimes tear up easily. You look at the people coming in there and think, okay, I've achieved this, or we've achieved this with the group. Afterwards, you crash. You've got to be very aware of that crash the next day, I guess. So we all caught up and had a coffee on the committee, and the next day, and just had a little bit of a debrief and make sure everyone's okay, and go. We say the phrase so much is the self-care. Recognize that you will have this crash. It's inevitable. And just watch for it and look after yourself afterwards, and put something in place. So go and rest up, and make sure you can just look after yourself, and be very, very mindful of that big drop in emotion, I think.
And when is it that you start planning the next event?
In about 20 minutes, I've got a meeting. So it's our first committee meeting. It's just really to pull apart things, what happened, and probably establish, we'll have a break for a couple of months, how we did it last year, and then come together and start planning for the next one. So yeah, I don't really stop thinking myself.
Yeah. So is it like a debrief that you're having with your committee?
Yeah, just to talk about what, we did raise some money on the day, for that amount of people there. So we do ask for donations, but we're not charging for anything. So we sort of put the word out there. And Bendigo Bank were fantastic. They got the little card swipe, and so if people wanted to swipe some money, we could. Rotary were there cooking up a storm for us, and they donated all the profits from the food for us.
Wow.
So there was a bit of money raised, which is going to the Busselton community-led safe space, which is fantastic, which has just recently opened as well. So another fantastic idea from Roses in the Ocean there. So which I'm really passionate about. Obviously on the community, well, not obviously, on the project coordinator for that project. So we'll come together, have a chat, make sure everyone's all right, and discuss any failings that sort of presented themselves, so that we can improve on it. And like I said earlier, I'm probably going to throw a spanner in the works and try and change up the formula, which is what I think it's a good idea, to keep chopping and changing it a little bit and keep it interesting for people. Anyway, there's music festivals all the time down here. So you can go to them in summer. You can go to one every second weekend. So we want to keep it interesting.
Yeah. Well, it'll be. I'm keen to see what you make of next year's festival.
You better come over.
Being more different than you already have it, that's a challenge. I don't know how you're going to achieve that. And I would love to come over. I was trying to get my sister to attend because she is in WA, but maybe I'll have to come over and drag her to it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And then we can make it 1,502 next year. That'll be good. So, yeah, but no, it's like I said, I think quite important to keep it interesting. And Kendall and the whole committee, to be honest, it's I shouldn't single anyone out. David Johnson, Naya Horn, Angela Griffin, and myself, and Kendall White was the committee this year, and they're just all fantastic people. Very the hours. I should have kept log of the hours we spent on in meetings, and just the sheer legwork, and there's always someone's got to go and pick up the flyers, someone's got to go and do this, someone's got to do that. There was always someone there to do something and do this and do that. It just really flowed and worked well. But obviously the bigger event, the more people you need to help, and just find like-minded, passionate people. They're out there, they're out there, and when everyone has differences, obviously, but when you keep the goal firmly in sight, which is to save lives, it's easy to try and bring everyone back together. So, okay, we can have a disagreement on this, that's fine, but the end goal's still here. Just a disagreement, it's not the end of the whole show.
Yeah, that's a really good attitude. All right, well, that was it for my questions. Did anyone have anything they wanted to contribute or ask Jon?
Jono, I just want to say you're a legend, mate. You're a champion. I've run community events for years, and I've sat exactly where you are now. Everything you've said is exactly what we need to do, and I find that there are so many people out there that want to help, they just don't know how. So when somebody like yourself or I've done, you put your hand up and say, this is what we're going to do, they say, yep, let's do it. And they'll come to you and say, okay, so how do we do it?
Mm.
And exactly as you said, if you've got the idea, people are there, they want to help. They just need to be shown how. And I ran one event that we ran for 9 years, and basically COVID killed us at the end. But, you know, I had a wonderful little core around me that just said, look, we don't get the logistics, we don't get how to put it together, but we're going to be there on the day to make it work. You know, and those committee people, volunteers, helpers, they're the gold that help make it work. And yeah, annoy your council as you do, about having to just walk it into the mayor, who's a friend, and telling him how the council should support it. And I'll drag media in with me while we do it, and that way we almost embarrass them into supporting it. But for us too, Bendigo Bank have always been magic for events that we do across the area, Rotary as well. And it is, you just got to get out and have a go, but it's exhausting. We used to run this in September every year, and one thing that we found was that a lot of the local grant applications started again in the October. So you'd literally finish one event, you'd have a week off, then you'd be writing grant applications again. And a lot of that's understanding when grant applications need to be in, and that catches people out sometimes. But yeah, you're 2 years in, you'll start to see progress now. We always found it about that, you know, year 3, year 4, that's when it really exponentially picks up.
Right. So if it's
went the first time out of curiosity, they then told friends who went the second year, and then the second year people sit down and go, yeah, that actually works. So your next year of 90 growth is going to grow, mate. So look out.
That's a really good point, Glenn, because I suppose people would kind of give up if their first year was not a success. But from your experience, it's the start of the traction to create a really great event.
It takes time, and it takes time for it to get known in the area. And you've got to be a little bit patient. And I think about year 5, we noticed a bit of a lull, and then it picked up again. So it's that combination of, as you said, mixed up a little bit. Do something a little bit different each year, but don't try and be too different. Keep the basis of what you're doing, because that's why they're going.
Mm.
And you know what you're doing it for a reason, and that's why they're there, mate. So
I've heard that from other people too, that you know, the 3rd or 4th year it still could really start ramping up.
Yeah.
Look, it's, you know, I was amazed we got it off the ground to start with in some ways. Other ways I wasn't, you know, otherwise I was like, no, this is going to happen. There's no way it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I work on the theory, and I've talked about it with other people, that if it's meant to happen, it'll happen. It doesn't matter how it seems. If the time's right and it's something that needs to happen, it'll happen. You know, use the old Kevin Costner adage, mate, if you build it, they will come.
Mm.
If you put it on, and it's put on for the right reason, and that's from the heart, which you do, they'll come.
Mm.
And that's what it's about. And just like you, Hayley, if we could get the chance to get over there, mate, I'd be over there in a heartbeat to give you a hand.
Yeah, and both of you are in, I suppose, regional areas. Do you find it's easier, people are more community minded in those regional areas?
Look, Bustleton is an amazing place. The support for everything I've done has just been, you know, it's moves me to tears constantly, the community support that I've received. And, you know, none of this can happen without that support and the volunteers or the people that want to help. But just, it might be something simple like donating a set of tyres for an auction night or something like that. You know, there's people just want to help, and, you know, they understand this pain, I guess, and they don't want someone else to go through it. And, you know, not everyone can step up and be public. And I'm happy to step up and be public and take those people, help them to support it, if that makes sense, and be the voice for those people who can't stand up. It sounds like a bit of a cliche, but I take that very seriously.
That's spot on, mate. That's it. Because as I said, a lot of people don't know how to do it, or they don't know how to reach out themselves. But if someone will step up, which you do, it's there. And don't be afraid to walk in and bang on people's doors and ask the question. All they can do is say no. I've walked into national hotel chains and said, look, this is what we're doing. I want a raffle prize. They've just gone, yeah, sweet, we'll do it. We've been really lucky. Rigid's hotel groups up through the Snowy Mountains of just every year of, amazing raffle prizes to do, just because it's something to do with mental health. And you just never know. The CEO of that organisation or the general manager of that hotel may have lived experience. Unless you go in and knock on the door, the worst they can do is say no. You're like me, mate. We're big enough and ugly enough that no's never going to worry us.
Well, even, you've still, I wrote something the other day, if you go in and you get a no, so say if you go and organise or go and knock in a shop and say you want a donation and you're doing a concert for suicide prevention and awareness or whatnot, you've got the word suicide into the conversation. So even a no is still a win, really. It's brought it out of the shadows. So
that's right.
It's no, you're not going to get a yes every single time. It'd be too easy, and everyone would be doing it. You must be prepared for rejection and no. It's funny. It's a part of it.
I look at that and I look at when I first started one of the events I ran back in 2010, and a lot of people went, yeah, no, you won't get it off the ground. And then when we had a couple of suppliers, a couple of trade people that stuck with us all the way through, food vendors and that. And then once we became big and we became noticed about year 7, I had people coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, we'll come along and do this for you. We'll come along and do that for you. And I said, no, actually, you won't. Because the guys that have been there with us all the way through, they'll continue to get the support. And if you do want to, it's going to cost you twice as much. I asked you for $100 the first time and you said, no, this time you want to get on board, it's going to cost you $500. Because you told us we'd never do it. And it's easier to get 12 people to do a $100 sponsorship than it is to get someone to go out and do 1,000. But you just keep asking and you just keep doing it. And, people, I had guys that used to look at me and go, yep, it's May, here you come again. The event's September. And they were sort of like, yep, but it stays in their mind. And that's the thing, it stays in their mind. And while it's in their mind, the conversation's being had.
And, I'm sure people see me walk down the street and they just go, oh, lock the door, quick, here he comes again.
Yep.
Bang on, I'll put this poster up in your window and would you like to donate? Go away.
I got little stickers made up that said, we support this particular event and would take it, so can we put this in your window? And they just used to look at me and go, there's no date on that. I said, no, that's because you're going to keep doing it every year, aren't you? But if the idea's right and the way it's done is right and the feelings behind it is right, it'll happen, mate. It'll grow. And then you sit down after it and you have a look around. And you think, yep, it worked.
Yeah, it's nice when it's all done and dusted. So and you head home, and like I said, you don't particularly. I don't know about you, Glenn, but did you enjoy the days? Because they're so busy.
I don't see the day.
You just your head's spinning, and there's you're putting out spot fires left, right, and centre of things that people don't even realise that are going on. Like amps not working, perhaps, or all the bits and pieces that go with it. So there's
yeah. I was always fortunate. My amazing wife would do all that sort of work behind me. And, I'd be running around trying to do things. And she'd just say to me, for Christ's sake, get out of the caravan and just go, and leave me to do this. And you don't really see the day, but that's all right. You spend all day walking around talking to people and you have it behind you that makes things happen.
Yep.
Well,
But after the event, yeah, it's hard to pack it all up, put it all away, and then start again.
I reckon I could have left you two to have this conversation, just stepped out. Both of you have so much wealth of knowledge to give on this topic.
I think Glenn's got a bit more than me. He's been doing it a bit longer by the sound of it. So what was your event called, Glenn?
Look, for years, mate, we ran the, it started out as the Pandora Community Bike Show, being the motorcyclist. It evolved over years into the Bega Valley Motorcycle Expo. And we were the prime, over those years, supporter for local SPAN network, children's ward over at the local hospital, put money into suicide prevention. We only ever used local supply. If possible, we used local business. I think over the 9 years, we put probably close to $200,000 back into the community in some way, shape, or form. But you know, they were good fun events, and we did. When you start talking about making it bigger and better, mate, the last one we did, we put 160 tonne of dirt into the local showground so we could run motocross events. That sounds great and it's spectacular, but the following day, you've got to get that out again.
And then you start to think, oh my goodness, what have I done?
What are you going to do? And people come in and say, well, that was great. What are you going to do next year? You know, so.
Get the V8 supercars.
We don't, but everybody will give you suggestions on what you should do. You know, and I had one at one point, and I just said, okay, you find me a $10,000 sponsor, and I'll do it.
Yeah.
But why? I said, because that's what that's going to cost me, because we've already talked about it. So at the end of the day, keep doing what you're doing, mix it up, but also be kind to yourself and make sure you can sustain it.
Yeah, like I said, I'll make plans for the next day. That's for sure. You know, that crash is very real for me, as I would imagine it is for you. You'd recognise when I said that you're on such a buzz when things are going down, and it's happening, and then all of a sudden it's all done, and a year's worth of work's behind you. You think, oh, you know, what just happened?
Yeah, and then you start again, and you do it because it's a passion.
Yeah.
You know, and that shows, mate, and that's, you know, we all, as you said, once you're in this circle, you learn who's there and who supports and who does what. And, you know, we do it because we love it and it's our passion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to rein you fellas in, because coming up to the end of the session, if listeners want to know more about the cool stuff that Glenn does, I had a chat with him the other day about all of the skills and experience that he brings to his suicide prevention work, and he talks a little bit about putting on events and stakeholder engagement and lots of other really cool stuff in that video, so I'd encourage you to check it out. But I'm going to wrap it up here. And Jon, is there any parting words that you wanted to say as we end the session?
No, keep on rocking, eh? Yeah, like it's like Glenn said, you know, it's and I said earlier, it's just something really amazing to see all these families and kids up there bopping away for these acts that you put up on stage, and you know, they all had the opportunity to perform and get paid if they wanted to get paid, and you know, mission accomplished, I guess, for this year anyway.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Jon, and for your contributions as well, Glenn. Really appreciate all of the insights that you've brought to this session. Good luck for the V8 Supercars, Glenn, and for your music festival into something else wonderful, Jon. And yeah, I hope you both have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you hopefully at the next CriticLE event.
See ya.
Pleasure, guys. See you in Tassie, Jon.
Yeah, see you, Glenn.
Bye.